Defense News. It's proudly sponsored by Navy Federal Credit Union. If you're a member of our nation's armed forces, the Department of Defense, or if your family is, we'd be proud to serve you too.
On this episode of Defense News Weekly, the White House releases its 2023 defense budget, and there's a lot to unpack. We check out the major headlines from the Biden administration's request. The Air Force Research Laboratory cooks up a new kind of drone defensive system meant to protect bases. Find out how it works. Plus, the head of the Army's acquisition program talks about how the U.S. can ramp up production of systems like the Javelin and Stinger missiles. Finally, a question about whether contaminated groundwater caused cancer in some California service members. It's the latest news and analysis covering the Pentagon's The Platoon, here on Defense News Weekly. Welcome back to Defense News Weekly. I'm Andrea Scott. There are some big surprises coming out of the annual defense budget requested from the White House, covering everything from the Army's end strength to the Navy's ship count. To drill down on the $773 billion outlay, Daniel Woolfolk has the details.
Jen, the White House recently came out with its budget proposal for the DoD. What's the big number there?
So this is the fiscal year 2023 budget request from the White House, and this is specifically for the Pentagon. It's $773 billion. That's a 4% boost from last year's budget request.
And you cover ground warfare. What is the Army itself getting?
So the Army's budget is $178 billion, and that's $163 billion in the base budget. And in addition to that, there is $15 billion carved out for overseas operations. Now that's still in the base budget, but this is specifically just to show that the Army is putting money towards overseas operations. The Defense Department and Congress decided to get rid of overseas operations contingency accounts, or OCO accounts, which paid for unpredicted operations overseas. But that was kind of turning into a little bit of a slush fund over time. And so now whatever the Army has to pay for things is going to be coming out of the base budget.
And a big priority for the Army, regardless of everything going on, is still modernization. What are we looking at there?
So the modernization accounts have been preserved. Now, a year ago, there was a question of whether we would start to see some cuts or some slowing down of programs in the modernization accounts because we didn't really know where these budget top lines were going. But it seems that the Army has found a way yet again to preserve all of their priority programs, such as long-range precision fires, next-generation combat vehicle, future vertical lift. There's quite a few programs that we're expecting to see come online as initial fieldings in FY23, including the precision strike missile, as well as a hypersonic ground-launched weapon capability.
You mentioned overseas operations and the unpredictability, especially right now. We'll have the allocated for that. I believe deterring Russia is a big part of it.
Yeah, so the Army is actually getting a pretty decent chunk of the European Deterrence Initiative funding, which is funding carved out to help with the reassurance of our NATO allies and to deter Russia in Europe. They're getting totally across the board for the Pentagon is $4.2 billion. And
you mentioned that Congress is still going to get a go at it. Do you think they might insert some money for Ukraine and for?
Oh, I mean, I absolutely would think so, and we're already seeing that happen. In the FY22 omnibus spending bill included a large sum of money to help Ukraine, both in terms of providing weapons, but also to help, say the Army pay for some of the deployments of our troops that we have sent to Europe to reassure our allies.
And modernization is a big thing, getting new equipment, new systems, the nice stuff coming in. Are any of the legacy systems being slowed down in terms of acquisition?
So that's the other side of the card in terms of being able to preserve your modernization priorities. The Army really has had to take a look at where they are with their current fleet, whether every system needs to be upgraded. Maybe they can slow the procurement of certain systems. So the Army is slow rolling the procurement of some Abrams tanks, Stryker combat vehicles, Bradley infantry fighting vehicles, as well as the Paladin improved management howitzer or PIM howitzer. And so all of those are seeing a little bit of a cut, but it really is to preserve the modernization priority. In order to make these new systems come online, we can't just keep throwing money into these older systems. We have to modernize now.
Jen, there was a little bit of a surprise with the end strength. That's the number of people in the Army. What's that number?
In FY22, we had 485,000 troops approved in the active force, and that is going to drop in FY23 to 473,000. Now, this is only going to be a temporary drop. The Army said this is not budget driven. It's really an issue of handling the balance of recruiting really quality talent to the force. And so they will continue to work on improving recruitment numbers over the next 5 years or so with the hope to be able to restore that end strength number to 485,000 in the active force. Now, the Army National Guard is staying at 336,000. That's the same as FY22. That's going to be steady, as well as the Army Reserve, which is 189,500.
Jen, thank you for coming on. You got a lot on your hands with all those numbers and even more numbers. We're going to be talking with Leo Shane, our Capitol Hill Bureau Chief, who's going to go through the top line budget.
So the White House's defense budget for fiscal 2023 is $773 billion. That's a 4% increase from what they had in fiscal 2022. And if it's approved, it's almost a 10% increase from 2 years ago. So it's a really big number, but there's a lot of lawmakers who say it's still not big enough. They're looking at what inflation is. They're saying that the number actually needs to be somewhere in the mid to high $800 billion range to keep up with all of the cost of living and the inflation costs that the military is going to have to deal with. So that's going to be the key fight going ahead, is just how big should this budget be? And that trickles down to all of the priorities within it. When you look at the Navy seeing a 5% increase in their defense budget, that's a big number. That's good news for the Navy. But the budget also includes getting rid of about 24 Navy ships. That's going to be a key fight. There's a lot of lawmakers who say we need to grow the fleet, not shrink it. The Air Force is seeing almost a 4% increase, but again, 150 aircraft, legacy aircraft, are going to be reduced, going to be decommissioned there. There's a lot of folks who say we need to have a larger Air Force. We shouldn't be getting rid of these legacy programs. Biden administration is focused more on putting the new money into research and development, looking at hypersonics, looking at microelectronics, and things like the military pay raise. There's a 4.6% pay raise in here. That's supposed to keep up with inflation and the cost of living. But again, some lawmakers are saying we might need even more given all the costs out there. Another big headline from this budget submission is the Space Force, which is going to see a pretty significant increase in its budget, up about 35%. You know, this is a service that a lot of people thought the Biden administration might scale back or even get rid of. This was really a Trump administration idea, but instead they've invested in it. They're going to be growing the number of Guardians in the Space Force over the next year and putting a lot more money into it. The Army and the Marine Corps, they're going to see much smaller increases, less than 2% for each of those. It's going to be a pretty big fight on Capitol Hill, especially as they try and draw down the number of soldiers and Marines in the service there. Where other money is going to go is towards things like the European Deterrence Initiative and the Indo-Pacific Deterrence Initiative. These are training and support programs that we've seen over the years to coordinate better with foreign militaries. Notably, about $300 million is going to be dedicated for Ukraine. This isn't going to be direct money that goes to Ukraine for equipment right now, but instead this kind of training and partnership idea that gets them ready for fights like we're seeing in Russia right now. On the personnel side, there's quite a few items for troops and their families. That 4.6% pay raise, that means about $1,300 more a year for junior enlisted troops, about $2,500 more for mid-career folks. That's a lot of money, but again, the question is whether or not that keeps up the rate of inflation and really helps those families keep up their quality of life. There's also a basic needs allowance to help families that are making less just make ends meet, and increases in the annual housing subsidy and other assorted benefits. Now, where it goes from here, we'll see the Congress get into the budget, spend the next few months really debating this, hopefully come to some sort of consensus before October 1st. That's the start of the new fiscal year. In recent years, Congress hasn't come close to meeting that deadline, and the DoD's had to work on just short-term extensions of the budget, which causes all sorts of program headaches. So with an election year coming up, hopefully this year they can get it done by that deadline.
When we come back, part of our recent conversation with the Army's new acquisition chief. Welcome back. With modernization a major part of the Army's future, the plan to build and acquire the equipment the force needs to realize its goals is front and center. Recently, the new acquisition chief for the Army spoke to Defense News as part of a live webcast. Here's part of that conversation.
How are you thinking about acquisition management for solutions that tackle elements of the climate strategy? I think some of these technologies that are emerging span across program offices, responsibilities. They do more than one or two things to get after, say, power management or power storage on the battlefield, for instance. So how do you open the door for capabilities that don't fit neatly into one bucket? I think the climate strategy is a good example of some of the things that you'll be looking at that relate to this kind of problem.
So I think the strategy is a very good one in that it sets ambitious goals and then leaves it to the Army, elements of the Army with responsibilities to work towards those goals. So I think the strategy also captured a lot of work we already had ongoing. So things in terms of hybrid vehicles, electric vehicles, fuel reduction, microgrids that can support more fuel efficiency and less power demand in the field, for example. So I think it captured a lot of that. So our job in acquisition will be to work towards those goals and prioritize some of those efforts now that the secretary's laid down the marker of where we need to go. And I think we're working towards that. The best thing about the strategy, I believe, though, is it really prioritizes combat capability is still number one. So anything we're doing, that comes first. And what you're looking for is the win-wins, where something is both better for soldiers in combat and better for the climate. So those are really the areas I'm focused on. It doesn't have to be a trade-off between the two. I think there's lots of areas where we can achieve both goals at the same time, led by industry, frankly, that has vast amounts of research and development funding that they've put into those kind of technologies that we can leverage and integrate into Army programs.
I'm going to jump into some specific program questions for you. Is Javelin production at its maximum capacity, or is there ramp up room? What about Stinger missiles? How much room is there to ramp up? As we look at potentially giving more missiles to foreign countries. I know we can't dive in specifically to certain operations right now, but just to get a sense of where we are in terms of production and how much more we can accelerate that if needed.
Sure. So they're somewhat different cases. Stinger was in a very low rate production for primarily foreign partners right now. However, with enough funding and support from Congress, which I believe we are going to have, we can accelerate that production for the United States in order to replenish stocks of what we provided to other countries. There's a lot of details below that, though, that the team will have to work through. It's not just the missile, it's the ancillary equipment that goes with it. The full set of equipment you field, all of those also have to be produced at a faster rate. So I think the line can be accelerated from where it currently is with regard to Stinger. And we're working through those exact issues right now. Congress provided a large amount of money in the omnibus to help us replenish our stocks, which we greatly appreciate. And we are very close to being ready to inform Congress of our first moves in that direction. Javelin is in higher rate production. It's at its current production rate, which is quite high, but it can go higher. So that'll, again, be working with our industry partners, support from OSD to help us if there's any authorities we need to exercise, like the Defense Production Act. But there are ways to work through how to get, for example, long lead items faster to enable faster production, or just production at greater scale. So I think really those are two opportunities for the Army to rapidly move ahead the way Congress wants us to replenish those stocks. I think we can do it.
And turning to the Air Force, the threat of drones on the battlefield is a tough one to solve, especially when it comes to guarding bases. But the Air Force Research Laboratory has been working on a new system to take down unmanned vehicles. And in this week's MilTech, Todd South takes a look at how it works.
past couple decades, as small drones have proliferated the battlefield and become more advanced and more capable to attack U.S. outposts and other types of installations, all areas of DoD have been looking at how to counter that drone problem. One such effort that's seen some success in testing is from the Air Force Research Laboratory, known as THOR. That project is the Tactical High-Powered Operational Responder. Essentially, it's a larger system run by 2 operators that can be delivered in a 20-foot shipping container on a C-130 that can drop into a base, be it a FOB or otherwise, as long as it has a power supply, and knock down drones at great distances and multiple drone swarms at once. Now, while THOR has actually shown good testing in different types of environments for the scientists, and also out in certain field operations and testing scenarios, it hasn't, of course, been deployed yet. First, they have to build a prototype. To do that, the Air Force has selected Leidos and given them a $25 million prototyping contract. Now, Leidos doesn't have a lot of time to create this prototype. They have to have it delivered by next year, 2023. And in keeping with the Norse mythology comic book superhero Thor, the follow-on prototype is going to be called Mjolnir. And if you know your comic book and Norse mythology, Mjolnir is the name of the hammer that Thor throws to defeat his enemies. This Mjolnir, however, won't be a cool little accessory that we can all model. It's actually going to be an invisible laser that's silent and moves at the speed of light. And the Air Force is going after a laser solution for a lot of reasons. Right now, small arms fire really isn't that effective in taking out drones, and even if it does, it's only at short distances. Also, larger caliber weapons, be it artillery or missile systems, are quite expensive to shoot, especially when there's multiple drones coming at once, and that munition can only hit one target. So what Thor, or Mjolnir, will do is essentially give a concentrated burst of high microwave energy that will knock out electronic systems at long distances. So you don't have to wait until those drones come up on the border or the edge or the fencing of your installation. You can knock them out maybe before you even see them with the naked eye. Time and speed of deployment are of the essence, especially when firing the system. Well, first off though, to set it up, it takes about 3 hours for 2 airmen or 2 soldiers to set this up after offloading it from a C-130 transport plane. So it can be pretty mobile and go just about anywhere in the world. Now actually for firing, this system can charge and fire after identifying a target in about a second under testing. The way the Air Force Research Laboratory coins it, it's basically a speed of light solution to go after these counter-drone types of effects that is always silently watching, always protecting, quickly detecting, and effectively destroying. This isn't an Air Force only effort. This also involves the Army's Rapid Capability and Critical Technologies Office and the Joint Counter-UAS Office, bringing together all the different DoD aspects and learning how this system might be able to help other service branches protect their installations. And now while Thor's Mjolnir is a great solution for protecting bases, it doesn't necessarily solve all solutions, all problems for counter-drone work, such as at the squad level or on a ship perhaps. But there are other solutions out there pending. The DoD is working multiple programs across multiple offices and services. And while fielding won't be immediate, with the prototype delivery in 2023, something could be coming around the corner quite soon. For Military Times, this is Todd South.
Thanks, Todd. When we come back, it's your regular lesson in finance tips in this week's Money Minute. Welcome back. On this edition of Money Minute, Navy Federal Credit Union personal finance expert Jeanette Mack gives her latest tips.
If you've never bought a home, you may not know that getting pre-approved gives you the best idea of how much house you can afford. Not to mention, it lets sellers know you're serious about buying their home. It's also a great advantage in a seller's market where there may be more than one interested party in the home you're looking to buy. A pre-approval will also save you time and legwork by eliminating properties you can't afford. On the flip side, it could also open doors to homes and neighborhoods you didn't realize you could. If you or a loved one is hoping to buy your first or even your 5th home in the next 12 months, or any time for that matter, I urge you to get pre-approved. It's what sets you free to house hunt and make offers quickly, which is a leg up in today's market. Find a lender you trust for your pre-approval, but that doesn't mean you have to close your mortgage with that particular lender. Do shop rates and make sure you get the best deal possible, but don't underestimate the power of the pre-approval. It's a crucial first step in the home buying process. So whether you're in the military or not, it's your first home or not, get pre-approved. You'll be glad you did.
Thanks, Jeanette. We'll see you next week. To get in-depth coverage of stories like the annual budget and more, check out headlines online at Army, Navy, Air Force, and MarineCorpsTimes.com and DefenseNews.com. And to be the most up-to-date in your unit, get the latest military and defense stories in your inbox every weekday with our Early Bird Brief. And send around at that follow button for our latest news on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and Instagram. And when we come back, a story about potential groundwater contamination at a California military facility. Welcome back. Veterans out of an Army base in California are raising the alarm over what they think are illnesses due to contaminated water at the facility. Before Fort Ord was closed as an active training base in the 1990s, the Environmental Protection Agency listed it as one of the most polluted places in the nation. Now, some veterans with cancer are speaking up with questions about whether the contamination was the cause. Army veteran Julie Akey arrived at California's Fort Ord in 1996, living there while she studied at the nearby Defense Language Institute. She and other troops living there didn't suspect that the drinking water may be contaminated. Now, after an Associated Press investigation into health issues possibly connected to the base, Akey and others wonder if present-day cancers are linked to the site.
I was there in 96 and 97. Would have been nice to know. Would have been nice to have like water filtration or bottled water, or not to plant vegetable gardens. I was diagnosed with multiple myeloma, bone marrow cancer, which was a complete and total shock. Changed my life forever.
Fort Ord had previously been used as a training base for live firing and maneuvers, among other uses.
Fort Ord isn't only a basic training center, it's also one of the largest centers in the world for advanced individual training.
The soil is incredibly contaminated. We have a history of military exercises since prior to World War II, right? So we can imagine decade after decade of very toxic chemicals, including lead, PFAS, organic volatile compounds. The fact that they're cleaning it up is definitely a good thing, but it begs more questions, right? We need to ask at what level, and then what's left.
Connections between toxic exposure and disease are hard to prove, and local officials say there isn't strong evidence to prove the connection.
In 1996, there was a health assessment that was done to evaluate public health impacts, not only currently in 96, but also did look back. And in that health assessment, they did identify some drinking water impacts. However, they were brief. They made the determination based on the amount of time and the lower levels that they saw that there was not likely a public health effect as a result.
But former workers at the site say chemicals were often dumped haphazardly.
They'd pull the central plug on the helicopter and drain all the jet fuel right into the grass in the storm drainage system. Toluene, starter solvent, xylene, jet fuel. I can't even begin to give you the list. I knew we were breaking California environmental laws, and when I brought this up to my supervisors and tried to follow the chain of command as they tell you to do in the Army, everybody, they didn't want to hear it. They were telling me to sit down and shut up, but I didn't know what I was talking about.
Our military bases, sadly, bear the legacy of our chemical production. The military used the available products, and TCE was perfect for their uses. If you throw it onto the ground or into the ground, it will get into the groundwater and stays there for decades, and it's hard to clean up.
The VA has said it is updating how it determines links between medical conditions and military service, and encourages veterans to file a claim if they believe an ailment was caused by their service. But for now, the link has not been established for Fort Ord, which is still in the process of a multi-decade cleanup.
Why isn't the military tracking this? Why am I tracking this? I found a woman who lived just across the street from where I lived, and she has myeloma as well. She's a vet, and she was there a few years earlier, but how coincidental is that? I don't think it's a coincidence. I could be wrong.
And that's all we have time for this week. Please visit us on militarytimes.com and defensenews.com for more coverage. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next week.